really try to make this. We try to go on a journey together about it, and really I really do my best to understand how you know what you know and how you've come to believe what you believe. And
Sure.
I try to ask good questions, and sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't quite get there, but I try. But do you have an important belief you wish to discuss?
Yeah, I think it's one that's not only foundational to my own belief, but I think it's recognizable in others. When you sent me the link, well, the first thing I did was follow the link and listen to a number of the guests that you had interviewed previously. And I think there's a common denominator there from a belief perspective. Not that we're all these beliefs are the same.
Okay.
But from the starting point that I believe, first of all, that we are spiritual in nature. Now, I also believe that we have body, mind, and soul as well, and that we live in a very material, naturalistic world. But I think inherently that each person is spiritual in nature, and I think that most human beings have a sense of it, even if we couldn't articulate it or understand it fully. And so I think that gets expressed across a lot of different religions or a lot of different belief systems, obviously. But I think it's foundational to our human existence and understanding who we are. I think I felt that need for a long time in my life, even though I didn't grow up in church, had already graduated from the university before I came to follow Jesus. So my perspective from that end was there's something that I'm missing and I need, and in that belief process, I think what I've discovered is it's that relationship with God is the missing component. We are spiritual beings created in God's image for relationship with Him and with each other. And when that's missing, then we all feel the lack, and then I think we try to fill that in the best way that we can. And for me, that was certainly choosing to follow Jesus. So.
Well, thank you for explaining your belief, and if I understand your belief correctly, to summarize it, as you said, that we are spiritual in nature.
Correct.
And that is the fundamental belief, and it'll help me, I think, if before we start talking about that more, and the more people have sat in the chair where you're sitting, especially when people have used the word spiritual. I used to assume a lot, and I shouldn't. And I really want to know what you mean by spiritual when you say spiritual in nature.
Well, I think it carries certainly the supernatural component to it, meaning that there's something to us beyond just what we see around us and what we can touch and feel and taste and see. And what that may mean long term or eternally speaking is that when these bodies quit functioning, right, they break down, they were going to stop at some point, that we do have a destination beyond just here. I do believe we've got a purpose and a mission while we're here to make it a better place and to represent God. I think there was the Bible Project put it one way. We're here to represent creation to God and God to creation. And that's the purpose and mission right now, but we've got one beyond that is still a mystery. It's not like we can look beyond death and go, okay, this is what it's going to be like. We can't. But I think we're designed for it, whatever comes next. And so we carry on even when the physical dies.
So by spiritual, I mean supernatural, and then something carries on when we die. On a scale from 1 to 7, how confident would you say that your belief is true?
There's always a bit of mystery to belief, right? Faith has that component. I think that's one thing we wrestle with students every day is at some point as human beings, we all have to come to a settling point of what we can know and what we can't know. And that's where the faith and the belief process comes in. But on a number scale, I hate taking tests like this, but I would put it high because I firmly believe it, but at the same time recognize it could sound a bit arrogant to take a high number. But 1 to 7, yeah, I would say I feel pretty confident in that one at 7. I would put it there.
Okay. And then on a scale from 1 to 7, how important is it for you that the things that you believe end up being true?
How important is it that they become true?
That they are true. That they correspond with truth, a reality.
Oh yeah, I think for me that's one of the reasons why Christianity appealed to me from that side is I didn't have to check my intellect at the door to believe, and at the same time I feel like my sense of it is when I look at the human condition. I studied history for my undergrad degree and still love it to this day. When I look at the history of human beings on the planet, I come to recognize, at least for me, I think that Christianity best explains the human condition and best provides the remedy for it.
You're getting to my next question, so and you're probably not going to know what I'm going to ask is, how do you know that your belief is true? What it is?
Well, ultimately, I think that's where the mystery part comes in. I think belief is there's always going to be a certain amount of hope in your belief system that it is true. I think there's enough evidence through the course of my following Christ that I would say these are kind of like more mile markers in my journey to confirm that at least I'm headed in the right direction. But it still leaves the destination open, because I would look at the destination more in answer to your question is that's more like the proof and that, hey, this is true. I think God asks us to trust him along the way, but along the way you find certain experiences and encounters and relationship with him and through the scriptures that kind of egg you on a little bit, like you're headed in the right direction even though you've not finished your course yet, or you've arrived at a place of all knowing. We won't arrive at that place in any case, not on this side, without God revealing things to us. So.
Okay.
It's a rambling answer. I apologize.
Well, no. And I'm just trying to follow you. I really want to understand. So, I'm when asking the question, like, how do you know your belief is true?
Yeah.
And you're telling me, is it experience? Is it you're talking about kind of a journey? I'm trying to, if you know something, and I just really want to know how you know it.
I think it's certainly. I mean, we all would love to just have a series of proofs that say this is true, and I know this to be true. I think if we're all honest, we have to say at some level, I believe this to be true rather than I know this to be true. But at the same time, I think it's back to our starting point. I think the relationship component that we were designed for to have with God solidifies that for me in feeling that I know it to be true, even though I recognize fully that's an arrogant thing in a lot of ways, a presumptuous thing to say. But I know I need relationship, and the void confirms that in me, that it exists. I think C.S. Lewis, and I'm really bad at quoting people, so I'm paraphrasing drastically here. C.S. Lewis said something along the lines of, I believe in Christianity like I believe I see the sunrise, not because I can see it, but by it I see everything else. And what I found is I understand myself and everything else around me better through my belief. And that helps confirm it for me to be more likely true than not true.
Are you saying that the belief creates a framework from which the belief is true for you, that it makes sense to you? I'm really trying to understand. I'm just not there. Because what you know at a 7, and help me know how you. I mean, that's a really solid. That is just a very strong, intense belief, and you know something, and I would just,
there has to be, I think, an inner peace that comes to you in the knowing process. Like, for example, sometimes you come to a crossroads in your life and you've got opportunities and decisions to make. Which am I going to take this job? Am I going to do this thing in my life? And as a believer, I would kind of sit at that intersection of life, in a sense, and provide it to God, and put it before God in prayer. And when the peace came to me about a direction to take, then I might take that direction. It doesn't guarantee me an outcome, a good outcome even. It may guarantee me a hard road. I suspect a lot of us would say that if I knew the road that I was going to have to take to follow God every day, maybe I wouldn't have taken that road, and which is why a lot of times it's not revealed to you. But
Okay. I
Yeah.
think I'm getting closer. So I think you're saying the belief, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but
No, go for it.
But the belief has given you a direction, and then when you are on this path,
Yeah.
and it's you feel it somehow that you're going in the correct way or the correct direction,
right.
right?
Yeah, I think there's also a sense of just knowing inside. Knowing, I guess maybe there's a couple different kinds of knowing we're talking about right now. Yeah, knowing like, I know that house across the street is there. I can go put my hands on it. I can walk through it. In a lot of ways, I know it's there. I think with belief, there's also a knowing that comes of residing in a place that you're supposed to be, and whether that's in a relationship or a place in life, that you just have an inner peace that you can't manufacture yourself. And I think that's probably what drives my confidence and my belief, is that there's a confidence that comes from outside of me. Because if I just go day to day, there's plenty of worry and fears and doubts and things that are going to come.
Sure.
That I'm going to wrestle with on my own.
Sure.
Yeah.
Could someone have that really strong sense of knowing, and that, like you said, like you just know it, and it's a different kind of knowing,
Yeah.
yet come to a different conclusion than you've come to, or with your sense of knowing, are you, if you know something as strongly as you know something, that there's only one conclusion that you'd be able to come to, and that would be your belief?
Yeah, I think it kind of begs the question is, a lot of people will object to the traditional Christian stance that Jesus is the only way to God, let's say. And then it kind of opens it up to why would you be so dogmatic and strong about, like, let's say Christianity or belief in Christ is the only way back to God versus Buddhism or Hinduism or any other ism that might exist, or atheism, if it was true, might be the way to go. But someone put it to me this way. It's kind of a simplistic answer, but why does there have to be more than one way? If you were in need of saving in an ocean, and someone threw you a life preserver, you probably wouldn't turn it away if that was the option. Now, again, I get that can sound very, very arrogant and dismissive of other religions and people's beliefs, and I don't mean it that way. To me, again, I think...
And I don't take it that way.
I really don't mean it that way at all.
Yeah.
And I interact with a lot of students and a lot of people that aren't of the same belief system that I operate in. But I find it to resonate true within me, which I think to me is a very... It's like it should be there. It should exist, that kind of piece of knowing inside yourself to a very strong degree, even if it's not 100%. It should resonate with you if that's what you were created for. That's why I kind of started with, if you are a spiritual being created in the image of God and for relationship with God, then there should be an exchange, and like in any relationship, that should happen, and there should be a confidence of, okay, I'm in the right place with the right person.
And this is a thought experiment I've used many times before, and this maybe will help me understand where you're coming from. Mm-hmm. And so if Timmy is sitting next to you, and Timmy, let's say, is a Muslim, and Timmy, with the same intensity that you know, that knowing that you know that your God is true, Timmy, with that same intensity, knows that his God, Allah, is true to him.
Sure.
And if I'm just a third person, and I just see you guys talking, and I really want to know what's more objectively true in the world, is there a way I can find out? Is it between you guys talk? Or is there something I can glean from the conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. I think any person should endeavor to do that, honestly.
Yeah.
when we're on campus and at the university, and students from various backgrounds, like tomorrow, for example, we'll be out in the pit area right in front of the student union, just trying to connect with students. So about 4 hours we'll be out there, just have a connection table, giving away free cookies tomorrow, and anyone that wants to engage further can, and I think they should. I think we've and maybe the Christian church is at fault over history for this too, is we've become a little bit defensive about the idea of someone coming from a different perspective on belief and faith. I think that's an answer to the question that I probably was not articulating very well, but in regards to this, I think I have confidence that if you have confidence in your belief and you really feel that you know this to be true, then you trust that those that are exploring it and plumbing the depths, so to speak, and investigating it will find the truth along the way. Which is why if Timothy's sitting next to me, I'm wholeheartedly endorsing him to present his belief system alongside of mine. And I would encourage you to, or anyone else for that matter, to truly explore it. But you're going to do that, you're going to have to dig, right? You can't. I think it's one of the things that we're struggling with in our culture today is that I see this with even my own kids at home. They walk around. I'm pointing to my phone now. We walk around with so much information, the history of the world in your pocket. And we're absorbing so much that I think the tendency is that your mental sponge kind of gets filled up and overloads at some point. And so we just slap labels on things, and we tend to know so many things, but only at a surface level, that we never dive into it. But to do that on a faith perspective, whether it's Islam or Christianity or some other form, you're going to have to read the scriptures. You're going to have to get some commentaries together to help you to understand the context in which they were all written and who they were written to and those types of things. And if you're willing, I trust that you'll come out where you need to be.
I guess what I'm thinking is if Timmy was sitting where you were sitting, I could envision Timmy saying basically the same thing, that he believes really intensely in the Quran, and if you really want to know what he knows, you need to read the Quran. You need to really, follow him and know what he's, and really kind of dig deep. And you're telling me they're pretty much the same thing. And I guess where I'm left with is that, and tell me if this is not correct, that intensely believing a belief that is true and intensely believing a belief that may not be true might feel the same. It might feel that knowing might feel the same to each person.
Sure.
But it seems that we're saying that that the belief itself is at odds with each other.
Yeah, I mean, you would expect someone, if they believe something, to be wholly dedicated to that belief. Which is why, honestly, when you asked me the first 1 to 7 question, I didn't want to answer 7, but at the same time, I think I was thinking to myself, well, either you're all in on this or you're not all in on this at the same time. And I get that doesn't leave really much wiggle room for even myself.
But why all in? I'm just trying to understand, like, why? Because when I think about beliefs, I believe most beliefs I don't know what I'm at a 7 at. I really don't. I'm just trying to think of. I'm just have to think about it for a second. But is it admirable to be at a 7?
I don't know. I don't know if I would look at it in those terms necessarily, but I would expect it. If Timothy's sitting next to me, I would expect him to believe through and through what he believes. Or if someone believes in, I think you had someone on your podcast, for example, that was a believer in Taoism, I believe. I would expect you to be fully engaged with your heart, mind, and soul in that prospect as well.
Would we think that Timothy's belief is less true if he believed it at a 6.5?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Would we feel less confident that Timmy's belief is true if he believed it at a 6.5?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't diminish anyone's faith for not being 100%, in. And when you asked me that earlier, I was kind of assigning it really to the origination, where I think is the best explanation of who we are as beings on the planet and in the universe. And in that sense, yeah, I can't find a better explanation at this time. Is there one? Maybe. Yeah, I wouldn't. I never try to close my mind completely off to it. But when it comes to belief, at some point, you have to either choose to believe or not believe. That doesn't mean we don't wrestle with stuff. We all wrestle with doubts about our own beliefs throughout our whole lives. It's not like, oh, I got it all figured out, everything's smooth sailing here the rest of the way. It's not. We deal with death and sickness and suffering in the world, and a whole lot of things that bring into question, what you believe. So,
well, maybe if I asked you it the other way, would there be? I know you're at a 7, but could there something that would happen to make you even more intense about the belief, like even stronger, like I know you're way up there, but
right.
It's something that you experience in your life, or more of a knowing, as you mentioned. I think that's how you know what you know.
Yeah.
Is there something that could happen that would increase the knowing?
I don't. Yeah, I suppose there could be, definitely, but I think it would have to come from outside the natural realm. In other words, I think God would have to reveal himself in some way that you just have to sit back and go, okay, this could only be God. This can't be something that Joe just thought up and thought this would be a good idea, or someone else manipulated you into believing. You'd just it'd have to come from outside with no other explanation. But I think in that case, something like that. I mean, something miraculous that, although we have a great capacity, I think, as human beings to rationalize away just about even the miraculous things in the world too. So, yeah.
Right. So, something miraculous happened. And I guess maybe what we're saying is miraculous is like something tangible. Like, I mean, are we saying like? I'm just trying to think of
I'll give you an example. Many years ago, my dad passed away. He had a lot of heart and health issues, but he was in the hospital. He was in the IC unit, and we were there with him around the clock. My brothers and I were just taking rotations, making sure someone was there. And in walked a friend of my brother's, and we didn't expect to see him. And so I said, well, what are you doing here? And he said, well, actually, he says, I came to the hospital because my grandfather is up on the 3rd floor, and he's going to pass away soon. He's got a hole in his heart. And so they've called the whole family in. They want to say proper goodbyes. There's nothing else medically can be done. And then I heard that you guys were here because of your dad, so I just thought I'd stop in, which was a really generous gesture of him. Well, my dad the next day had a massive heart attack and was just gone instantly. There was nothing they could do for him.
Yeah.
His grandfather, on the other hand, beyond any explanation, the hole in his heart closed up. And they sent him home, and I don't know how many more years he lived after that, because this was maybe 1994. Yeah, 94. That was beyond any explanation. I think there's a lot of data that's coming out now in the medical field from doctors who have worked in their field for many years, and the correlation between prayer and things happening in the physical realm that are beyond explanation or beyond medical explanation at this time. Doesn't mean you couldn't come up with a medical explanation later, but for what we know right now, medically, biologically, and otherwise. So I think those things go a long ways to kind of reinforce that belief. But at the same time, I think you could just go, well, maybe the doctors were wrong. I know a couple right now that were told unequivocally they couldn't have children. Just absolutely no way they could have children. And took them a long time to process that, and eventually processed it through like a blog. And a month or two later found out miraculously, or however you classify it, that they were pregnant when there was, seemingly no way for that to happen. So
you're at a 7, and there are things that what would make you even go even higher? I know you're very high, of course, high as you can go, but more confident in the belief is that more experience with things that you can't explain. And
I think you'd have to find a correlation there, though, between the thing happening and your belief. Like, there's plenty of things that happen that we can't explain that don't seemingly have a connection to our belief systems. But if there is, for example, I have been praying daily, or other people along with me have been praying daily for this specific thing to happen, And of course, that's written all throughout the scriptures, and for Christians as well. When you read the Bible, you see all these acts of miracles and things that God does, and so that's kind of written into the fabric of the belief system at the same time. But when you can connect specific targeted beliefs with the actual occurrence, I think there's more likely then that you go, okay, this really reinforces.
It reinforces.
Yeah,
right,
it reinforces my faith at that point. So.
And so, are you saying that if you prayed for a certain thing and other people prayed for a certain thing, day after day after day, and then the opposite, whatever that is, the opposite happened, would you become less confident in the belief, or you would? I know you'd become more confident if it happened,
right?
But would you become less confident if it didn't happen?
I think there's certainly that possibility. Yeah. Do I think it? I don't think it's a guarantee that the opposite would happen. Just like I don't think it's actually a guarantee, even if the thing that you prayed for happened miraculously. I've known people that over time have kind of said, well, maybe that wasn't what I thought it was, and just kind of let it go, and it didn't reinforce their faith. But I don't think on the opposite side of that too, I don't think it's a guarantee that it would draw away from your faith. Because one of the uniquenesses about, I think, Christianity and the way we view ourselves within it is that a lot of the things that don't go right in the world are human caused.
Okay.
And so you could pray for something. God doesn't trample on our autonomy, I don't believe, in order to make something necessarily happen. I don't see him, although I still believe God intervenes in the affairs of human beings. I don't think he does it in such a way as to control and force people, especially as it relates to relating to him. But what that means, I think, in this situation is if I pray for something, and it just doesn't happen. The person doesn't get healed, or
Sure.
the thing that I want, I desperately need to happen. Maybe there's a whole lot of things at play there that I'm not aware of that prevented it from happening. Why God would choose not to interact or act upon it in that, I couldn't begin to guess. I don't know.
So I think what you're telling me is that there are certain scenarios or certain things that could come along, certain things that happen that would strengthen your belief, but on the other side, that there's not much that could happen to make you less confident in your belief. That it's easier to fall this way than probably from a 7 to a 7.1 than it would be like from a 7 to a 6.9. I think what you're saying.
For me personally, I think that to be true. But if I read the story of Job, for example, and I see it's not just one terrible thing that he went through. If I had to go through a series of really difficult things that just never let up and seemed to rob me of all things that I held dear. I think I could see, certainly moment to moment, that it would undermine. It would take that belief down a few notches. Now, where I would come out, hopefully, would be still back where I started, but not necessarily.
So that would be a kind of a temporary thing.
Yeah, I think if we're all honest, there's things that we go through in life where it's loss of a loved one or some other things that are just extremely difficult to go through.
Sure.
There are stretches where we definitely struggle with our faith. Yeah.
Maybe it'll help if we talk about Timmy's belief in Allah, and let's say, make it easier to talk about that. Timmy believes his belief at a 7, and he could easily or more easily become more confident in his belief, and be very, very difficult for him to become less confident in his belief. Mm-hmm. How can we show Timmy?
Yeah.
How can we? It seems like it's going to be very difficult to help Timmy adjust his confidence in his belief if it needs to be adjusted. Right. I mean, maybe he needs to adjust it to be more confident. I don't, or less. But how could we help him to adjust his confidence in his belief?
Oh wow. I kind of don't look at it that way, I guess.
Oh, okay.
In the sense that, do I want Timothy to believe what I believe? Yeah, I do.
Right,
right. But
yeah.
I think if I want Timothy to be like me, then I win Timothy through modeling what I believe well. Again, explaining my faith well, being consistent in the way that I live it. I mean, many of us Christians, and I suppose just people in general, have undermined our own belief before people just by the way we've behaved or talked or even voted for that matter. But I think by witnessing to Timothy, I would try to win him to my side. And honestly, at times in that process to go, if he asked me something that I didn't know, just to say I don't know. And we tell our students that all the time, that, I will do my best to give you an answer that I'm highly confident in, but there may be times where I just go, I don't know. And that just unsettles us as human beings. We don't like that answer.
Sure. Right. And I'm just envisioning in a scenario like where Timmy, really tries to explain it, and he really tries to model it to you, and he's very consistent with the way he lives his life.
Sure.
And by all accounts, he's a good person, and he's charitable, and I is there a test? Is there something we can do? Is this as far as we can go? I
think one thing that I would point out to Timothy or anyone that didn't believe what I believe is the fundamental difference I think that you find in Christianity is grace. Is that, and what's meant by that is the unmerited favor of God, right? It's when you read 2 Corinthians, we're challenged to be Christ's ambassadors to reconcile others back to God. That's our mission on the planet. But
sorry, what is grace? I'm just trying
to reconcile others back to God. So there's been a void. If you take the garden scene from Genesis, and there was a break in the relationship by Adam and Eve's sin against God and trying to set themselves up to be like God. I mean, it's essentially what happens there, and essentially what I think is we've been wrestling with as human beings ever since is. We're wrestling with that, but we can't earn our way back to a right standing in the relationship with God. God instead offers that to us through Christ himself rather than us earning our way back. And that's a fundamental difference, I think, not only between Christianity and Islam, but a lot of ways of operating within a belief system is a lot of belief systems are built around I have to do X number of things or certain types of things in order to get my standing back before God.
So it seems like there is a test we can do, and that is overall this level of grace.
Yeah.
In that in Christianity we would expect overall to see a higher level of grace and then maybe Islam or another religion. So how could we know that? How could we see like higher levels of grace in one religion versus another religion? How can we test for that?
How can you test? Well, I mean, if you really wanted to do some analytics, I think you could do it, but that'd be really hard to do because so much of it happens organically, person to person, neighbor to neighbor. Churches certainly, if you look at churches in America, everything from food banks to shelters to orphan care and on, you see an expression of that. And I think it's the one thing that drives us as Christ followers greatly is that we recognize that we're receiving forgiveness without having earned it. And this grace comes to us from God himself to us. And therefore we are challenged and driven to express that back out to people around us. Those that certainly to everybody, really, without qualifications to it.
So I presume we could do a test in the sense that if we didn't know people's religion and then we found out how much people gave to charities or food banks and then we would be able to test for that, like overall, once we realized who gave the most, that people who are Christian gave the most to charities and the most charitable, and as opposed to other religions or non-religions, probably.
I think it would be an indication that you're on the right track with that.
I wonder if that's been done. I don't
know. Like I said, I think it happens so every day and so organically within the context of relationships that it'd be hard to quantify it. It'd be hard to measure it in some way.
If we were to run that test for some reason, and they can bring in 10,000 people, and I have no idea what would happen. But let's say, for whatever reason, people who prayed to Allah were more charitable and more giving than all the other religions.
Sure.
Would you then be less confident in your belief, or that wouldn't change?
I think I would ask why. And certainly, I mean, atheists can be more charitable than I can be. It's not a competition in that sense in any case, but.
And I just say that because I think you're telling me that is something that a way we could differentiate you and Timmy's belief, and I just.
I think it differentiates us in the sense that in our relationship to God, right? Not necessarily in the measurable outcomes in life per se. Although I do believe that I should be generous with my time and with my life and everything that I can be, because God has been so extravagantly generous towards me. It's not that God's demanding it of me, but I feel so blessed to have God do that for me that I feel propelled and compelled to do the same for others. I think it's a strong indicator. It's like one of those things as you're measuring, like, does it take you up like a little notch or down a little notch? It actually could have the more powerful impact on the negative side, meaning that if you see a Christian, it's like, oh man, you're saved by grace, but I don't see you extending grace to your neighbors. It can very quickly, take away from that because it's expected of you, and then maybe that's part of it. Is what do you expect of people, and then why do they do it, kind of thing. So.
I think you're telling me that that's not a test now. I think.
I don't. Yeah. Like I said, I think it indicates that a person is practicing what they believe. But when it comes to grace, I still wouldn't consider it a test. I just think it's different. The way Christianity views grace, the way reconciling the human being to God, how that happens within the framework of Christianity is only made possible through grace. It's not made possible by earning, right? Versus other religions where you have to accomplish certain things. You have to do certain things. You have to show that you deserve. Deserving's got nothing to do with it in Christianity. God says, because I love you, I'm doing this. I'm extending this grace to you. So I think for us as human beings, then we practice it very imperfectly going forward. So that's why I'm always kind of hesitant. We do it well sometimes and not so well other times. My wife and I were licensed as foster parents, and we fostered.
So are we.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. It's not a test, but when you look around the room, you spend weeks and weeks with a group of people. They're all getting licensed as foster parents, and when you hear their stories and you realize well over half are probably doing so out of their faith base, versus there's other reasons in the room why people do it, certainly, and I would never say, people can definitely do it out of the goodness of their heart, as we measure goodness in people. But I think as we measure goodness in people, it's also an imperfection. There's no, if something is good, it has to always be good and never not good. And to me, that's a perfection, and only God can hold that. But doesn't mean that as image bearers of God, we don't practice that in life. Hopefully we do. That we do a lot more of doing good in the world than bad in the world. So
let's, just as a thought experiment, let's suppose, and this is not my idea, someone thought of this, and let's suppose you're given a box.
Yeah.
And you open the box, and if you open the box, you are given this gift of perfect truth.
A perfect what?
Perfect truth.
Perfect truth, okay.
If your belief didn't happen to be true, obviously I'm not saying that, but if it did not happen to be true, would you want to open that box?
Would I want to open that box? Yeah, sure. Obviously, I can say that almost flippantly, right? Because it's a thought experiment rather than it's something I have to live out.
Yeah.
But How
would your life change, do you think?
It would depend greatly on what that truth is that we've discovered. It's like some people
The
think
truth of your belief. I'm just
right,
and I know.
so we're
you
basically
believe it
saying
very
kind of almost,
strongly.
we're kind of saying almost as a negative image here, meaning like then that would mean that my belief is not true, or at least it's only partially true. Let's say.
Yeah, and I think about that, about things I believe, and I'm just not your belief, like
Right.
Something I intensely believe that if I open the box, would I want to open the box, in the sense that
Yeah.
if it's a belief that would change everything, like if it's a belief that would change
Yeah.
my job, my marriage, would I really want to open the box? I ask myself that, and
Yeah.
and so I just
I think for me, yeah, absolutely. In fact, I would say, and maybe this is a kind of a corny way to say it, but I think I've already opened that box. I told you earlier that, didn't grow up in church. My idea growing up at church was you sit on a wooden bench and see what goes to sleep fastest, your head or your rear end, right? And that was kind of my concept, and be really quiet along the way. But somewhere along the way in my mid-20s, I opened a box that on the box, at least, it was labeled, this is true, this is truth, this is who you are, who God is, and I opened it, and I think I've been exploring that box ever since. Yeah, I don't know that I've explored it. I definitely haven't explored the whole box, but
And if Timmy said that he's opened that box,
yeah, sure,
where
I'm sure
are
he
we?
does. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think you have to taste and see for yourself. Honestly, I think that's really critical, important in our society today that we do that. Certainly on the belief level, but in a lot of things that we avoid anymore because it's uncomfortable, or it doesn't have easy answers to it. And I know I'm projecting myself as, I've got easy answers, but they're actually not easy to come by at all.
Yeah.
You take a step of faith and you start exploring, and somewhere along the way you either believe in it or you don't believe in it. It still doesn't arrive you at a place of, complete understanding and 100% confidence that
Sure.
I'm definitely here now. I've got it. So
And as we talked about, the reason why, or one of the reasons why I do this show, this podcast, is that we seem to have large segments of our population who believe really strong, intense beliefs about things.
Yeah.
And sometimes these beliefs are completely at opposite, opposed to each other. And trying to work through that, trying to think of how can we bridge this? How can we, if we have two groups and they both believe so strongly and both can't be possibly true, I'm concerned that, if both, with the intensity of those beliefs, there's no way that one group could discover that their belief is incorrect if it was incorrect.
Right. And it's even more difficult for that to occur when beliefs are rooted in cultures and generations as well, especially if that's the only thing you know.
Yeah.
I do think that that's rapidly changing, very rapidly changing in America. You don't have to go back too far that a lot of people would profess, and some people do still today, that America is a Christian nation, let's say. I worked in many countries overseas. My wife and I were overseas for a long time before we ever came to the university to do what we're doing now. And in those cultures, you get a very different perspective on the world and belief systems that exist out there. But if that's all you've ever known and you've never been exposed to anything else, I think that's my biggest worry for America, is we're too quick to avoid it, to avoid the conversation.
Yeah,
and,
I agree.
And which is why I love what you're doing. I think it's so necessary that we can journey together, even if we don't come to the same conclusions.
And in the spirit of that, thank you. Thank you for coming and speaking with me. And I think just, us talking and having a conversation, maybe we can get somewhere, and I can just ask you about your beliefs, and we can just explore it together and not, get emotional about it, upset about it,
Yeah.
and I really, thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
I think ultimately we all have to decide for ourselves. And but in that process, I encourage myself and all of us to, hey, let's explore around. Let's see what other people believe, and let's see, am I in the right box? Did I open the correct box, or is there another box that maybe I should explore? I mean, I feel pretty confident I'm in the right box at this point, but at the same time, I never want to close myself off to or dismiss people from where they're at because they're different than me. I think that's just one of the worst things that we could probably do.